Forbes Media Chairman and Editor-in-Chief, the one and only Steve Forbes. Steve, welcome to the show.
Good to be with you. Nice to see you.
So nice to see you, as always. You heard some of the comments from Bill Ackman. What are your thoughts?
Well, what they should do, but won't do, is break those entities up into several pieces and allow the private sector to reemerge. Since the bailout, and that's what conservatorship means, the bailout 15 years ago, what has happened, instead of really reforming these companies, what they've done is push out what remains of the private sector. About 85% of the mortgages now, one way or the other, attached to the government, whether it's Fannie, Freddie, the VA, Federal Home Building, Federal Housing Administration, FHA. And so we got to get some private enterprise back.
Would that be like the baby bells?
Yes, but even better than the baby bells, because innovations, for example, you mentioned the movable mortgage in effect. That should have been done years ago. We have these 3% mortgages out there, which frees people in their homes, hurts job mobility and the like. So why can't you have a portable mortgage where you can take that mortgage to your next house, and assuming you qualify and all that good stuff. So there are a lot of innovative things that can be done. And one of the things I hope the administration will be doing to help bring housing back a real market is contrast what it takes to build a housing development in a place like Texas or Georgia or Florida versus California. In Texas, you can get a project approved within weeks. California, a lifetime.
Yeah, truly.
Everything that the government has ever done in housing has screwed it up for people, I would argue. That's what's made it so unaffordable in the first place, is the fact that you get hundreds of billions of dollars in government subsidies to own a home, mortgage interest deduction, property tax deduction, the Fannie Freddie backing for cheap mortgages. You mentioned the Federal Housing Administration, VA loans, which does have actually transferable loans for veterans. But the only thing that'll make it affordable is for home prices to fall. And I know, so Zillow came out and said 53% of homes, so more than half, lost their value in the last year. That is the biggest percentage since 2012, the end of the last housing collapse. I worry that the government will intervene and try and prop up those housing prices rather than letting them come down, which would open up the market to all the people who are upset about affordability and being forced to rent rather than own.
Well, homeowners may take a different view once they buy a house to have it go down in value, especially with a mortgage. And we have to remember, since 2020, housing prices, median housing prices, have gone up 45%, far higher than the rate of inflation. And so the way we deal with this thing is really, it sounds Pollyannish, but the only way you deal with it is, in addition to these reforms in the market, make it easier to actually build a house, is higher wages, a booming economy. And that solves a lot of problems. And getting these Fannie and Freddie and these neo-socialist communist entities out of the market, because they do end up screwing it up. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, even after the disaster of 2008, lowered standards, lowered down payments, and then increased the amount you could guarantee through Freddie and Fannie, which drove out the private sector. So how about a little bit of real free enterprise, both nationally and locally on zoning laws?
They're under incredible pressure, politicians and everybody in government, from realtors.
Well, what I'm wondering is what has been a worse and more restrictive conservatorship, Britney Spears or Fannie and Freddie? Because, and either of you can chime in here, because obviously Britney Spears was in need of some cajoling in 2007, which was, I would say the bellwether for the housing crisis. Then she was thrown into conservatorship, and you could argue that her mental well-being has declined since then, and same for Fannie and Freddie. So you have people who are desperate to get into the housing market, but it's too crazy. I see a lot of parallels here.
I see where you're going with that. Yeah. Do you want to take that, or do you want to move on?
I'm going to drop Britney.
Okay.
What her dad was forced to do by the judge. That's right.
Do you want to? So President Trump, speaking of affordability, is talking about, he raised this issue last night, sending out some tariff checks, $2,000 tariff checks. It would cost, according to analysis, this is the Yale Budget Lab, $450 billion. Although the Yale Budget Lab says they wouldn't be inflationary. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, said that this would require an act of Congress, would require Congress to intervene. I don't like checks to people personally. The money is coming from where? Taxes. So continue, sir.
Well, first of all, they are counting on hundreds of billions of dollars of tariff revenues. What happens when, I think will happen next month or early next year, the Supreme Court rules that over half of those tariffs are unconstitutional because they're done through executive order rather than going through Congress. Even the Treasury Department sort of admitted that tariff is a tax, which is why they're lowering tariffs on foodstuffs, because people are sensitive about high food prices. So it's a tax. I think the court's going to rule. You want a tax, you got to get it through Congress. And so about 55 to 75% of that projected revenue is going to go poof. They won't have to repay what they collected in the past, but they're not going to be able to collect it in the future unless they get it through Congress. And that's going to be a very different kettle of fish than an executive order.
Yes, and a stinky one. And I think the tariff conversation is very much ongoing, and it is a very, very dynamic one, Mr.
So don't spend that $2,000, which we don't have anyway.
If you got 10 kids, though, man, that's 20 grand. That's a windfall.
That's a lot.
I am envious of Tim Carney right now.
That's a chunk of change.
That's absolutely right.
Before we go, but Democrats love this tariff thing. They won't admit it, but they love it because it's hidden. People can't see it and how it hits them.
That's why.
It's a little sliver of a value-added tax that's hidden. It would if these stay in place, they'll never go away.
Well, you hit it, VAT, value-added tax, which is the hidden sales tax that other countries around the world have loved because they're able to raise revenue. And as they raise the revenue, you blame the merchant rather than the government.
And I still buy the Gucci, Steve.
Great to see you, sir.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much.